Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and this is another episode of Ask the Lawyer. Well, this time of year, maybe not so much, but during the winter months, a lot of us like to cuddle up under an electric blanket and stay nice and warm and cozy. But unfortunately, staying warm under an electric blanket can be dangerous and has led to some serious injuries. Here to answer our questions about the dangers of electric blankets is attorney George McLaughlin of the Denver-based McLaughlin Law Firm. And thank you for making some time for us today, George. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
So what's the problem? What's the issue with electric blankets?
Well, there are two issues. One is that under certain circumstances, the blanket can actually catch fire. The other is that, again, under certain circumstances, people go to sleep with an electric blanket and they wake up with a burn. They were sleeping under the blanket or on top of a mattress cover that's electrically heated, and they can wake up with a first or even a second degree burn, and on rare occasions, even a third degree burn.
Well, let's take the first example first. Under what conditions are electric blankets bursting into flames?
Electric blankets can catch fire basically because the heating element overheated. There are two ways that can happen depending on the brand and technology of electric blanket. One is if the blanket just gets bunched up in some older design of electric blankets. You can bunch a blanket up, and there are little thermostats inside the blanket that are intended to turn it off if it gets too hot, to interrupt the power. And if you have it bunched up in just the right way that you've excluded the thermostats, it can overheat to the point of catching fire. There's a different, newer technology called positive temperature coefficient, PTC for short.
Okay.
It's a style of heating element that if the wires inside the PTC heating element were to fracture, and they can fracture just from use and age, if the wires fracture, they can create a tiny little electrical arc inside the heating element, which then ignites the heating element material, which is flammable. It's a polyethylene-based product. And then it just lights up like the fuse of a firecracker and catches the blanket on fire.
Well, and it would seem to me that in the first example, okay, you could say maybe don't use grandma's electric blanket, maybe, only use a newer version. But it sounds to me like you're saying in the second example, some of the newer versions can also have problems.
Well, yes, if you have an old thermostat style electric blanket, I think you shouldn't use it. You should throw it away. If you have an electric blanket that's more than 10 years old, even if you think it's working fine, it should be thrown away. The newer style heating element, I call it newer, but it's been on the market for more than 20 years. The newer style heating element had a lot of fires associated with it, with one particular style. It was a Sunbeam electric blanket that had a safety circuit built into it. That the intent of the safety circuit was to detect a broken wire and shut the blanket off before a fire would occur. That safety circuit apparently wasn't as efficient as it needed to be, and there were a lot of fires that I had represented people in over the years. However, Sunbeam came up with a newer, better safety circuit around the year 2001.
Okay.
And that safety circuit seems to have all but eliminated the problem. I've seen very few fires with the newer design of safety circuit. And again, if you have even a Sunbeam electric blanket that is 10 years old or older, I would not use it, and I'd get a newer one. At least you have the newer safety circuit, and you're sure to have the better technology with that. But in spite of the new safety circuit, and in spite of the other manufacturers that have different designs of heating element, we continue to occasionally see electric blanket fires.
Now, the other example you gave where people fall asleep on the blanket and wake up with burns, is that something that is still happening? How frequent is that occurring?
What's interesting, Rob, is I've been doing electric blanket fires since the late 1980s, and I've probably had over 100 cases that involved either a fire from an electric blanket or a heating pad, or someone that got burned from overheating of the product and causing them to sustain a burn. I saw very, very few what we call thermal burn injuries, where the person went to sleep and woke up and had a burn on them. I saw very few of those for the first 20 plus years I was doing these cases. But recently, I've started seeing a number of claims where people fell asleep and clearly woke up with a burn caused by the blanket. In some of my clients, you can actually see a line where they were burned along the length of the heating element, where it was against their arm or against their face or against their hip. It's really indisputable in some of these cases that the person was burned by the electric blanket because there's this line where the heating element was against them and left a mark, and there was no fire, there was no other potential cause of the burn injury, yet they wake up with a first degree or second degree blister burn.
So how do you explain the sudden resurgence of these burns? What's going on?
I don't fully understand it, but the one thing that is different, at least with the Sunbeam products, for decades, Sunbeam made 100% of the product here in the United States. Raw materials came in one door at a factory in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and finished appliances, electric blankets, toasters, whatever, came out the other door. That plant no longer makes anything. Sunbeam subcontracts all of their manufacturing for electric blankets to Chinese manufacturers. That's the one thing that is different, but I can't explain why it is some people wake up with burns when for decades I rarely saw it. There's a third problem that I've seen with some of these products, and that is that the control itself can overheat and catch fire.
Oh, wow.
I'm presently doing a case right now for a woman who had a security camera in her living room. And she went out on a Sunday to go get some food at a local fast food place. And when she came home, her house was on fire. And she had a Sunbeam electric throw. It's a small blanket intended to be used on couches and chairs. She had a Sunbeam electric throw on her couch. The security camera was pointed at the couch, and you can see the electric blanket control start to smolder, and then it caught on fire right on camera. And we have that video.
That seems like a pretty open and shut case there, I would think.
Well, we would think so. We're in the litigation right now. The manufacturer is, of course, denying responsibility, but it's pretty compelling to see this control start to smolder and then just suddenly catch on fire. That just shouldn't happen.
Right.
So control fires is yet another problem that I have seen with electric blankets.
So let's say I'm injured with an electric blanket, whatever way, whether it caught on fire, the controller caught on fire, or I was burned. What do I do next? What are my options? Where do we go from there? What's your advice?
Well, if you've been injured by an electric blanket, the first thing you should do is don't use it again.
Right.
Preserve it for evidence. I represent people all over the country. I've lost count of how many states I've had electric blanket burn injury cases in over the years, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody that's been injured by an electric blanket made by any manufacturer. I'd be happy to see if I can help them out.
I would imagine you recommend, obviously, don't get rid of the blanket, take pictures, and maybe check your security camera and see if that can help.
Well, most people don't have security cameras pointed at their bed.
Right.
Most of these fires happen when someone's asleep at night, or they've left their blanket on and they've left the room,
right.
Maybe even left the house. But if you've had an injury from an electric blanket, first of all, don't use it. Take photographs of the injury if you have burns. Of course, you should seek treatment and follow your doctor's advice.
Right.
You should take photographs of the control, photographs of the label, and preserve all of that for potential future evidence in a claim.
George, thank you so much for making some time for us today. I do appreciate all this information.
You're welcome, Rob. Thank you.
And that's going to do it for our episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been attorney George McLaughlin of Denver. If you want the best information about the dangers of electric blankets, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, please visit askthelawyer.com. I also ask that you take a minute and click on the button at the bottom of the screen and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Rob Rosenthal for askthelawyer.com. Thanks for watching.